Good morning, everybody. Ami first part of Representation of People's Act and Democratic Polity in Contemporary India. A topic to discuss korisilo. We talked in a lucid way about this part. है ना? Representation of People's Act 1950. If you haven't viewed this part of the conversation or our discussion that is available, I would kindly like you to go through this video first before coming to the second part of the discussion of today, the democratic polity in contemporary India. Okay, so now today we'll talk about the second part, hai na? Okay, so democratic polity in contemporary India. Ami first part of our conversation we talked about the word democracy, hai na? Ami saisilu ki democracy to keneke form hoy, features of democracy ki hoy, है ना we talked in a very lucid way আৰু তাৰ পিছত আমি চাইছিলো কি দুটা legislationৰ বিষয়ে আমি বহুত ডেপথত পঢ়িছিলো about the 1950 and the 1951 act है ना তো এই দুটা legislation এনো কেনেকে democratic polity to ensure কৰাত help কৰে বা হেতুৰ ফৰ্মেশনত help কৰে আমি হেইটোৰ বিষয়ে আজি অলপ elongated way discuss কৰিম and at the last part of our conversation today we will discuss a mains answer question. Okay, এই টপিকটোৰ বিষয়তে যাতে if this question comes in our mains paper, so we can very quickly write 3-4 points on each part of our question and our job will be done. Fine. Okay, so democratic polity formation. Fine. এই দুটা এক্টে কি এনশিওর কৰি আছে democratic polity formationত নো কেনেকে হেল্প কৰি আছে সেই বস্তুটোৰ ফাৰ্স্ট পইণ্টটো ইয়াতে লিখা আছে that it ensures direct democracy. Okay, direct democracy নো কি বস্তু হয় that we have written the provision of direct election for every constituency, okay, makes the process of election more democratic and participatory by encouraging and empowering people to play an active role in choosing appropriate candidates. Okay, makes the process of election more democratic. Fine. So direct democracy is a methodology jot ki hoy कि if there are m number of people তেওঁলোকে নিজৰ representative জনক directly elect কৰে not through a procedure of indirect elections. Okay, যেনেকে the Rajya Sabhar member bilakor electioner procedure to eta indirect methodology use নহয় জানো we cannot directly nominate the it is universal adult franchise to use নহয় হয় না নহয় তো আমি indirectly elect কৰো Rajya Sabhar member bilakok to হেতু নকৰি যেতিয়া আমি directly nominate কৰো elect কৰো আমাৰ representative জনক হেতু আমি direct democracy বুলি কম আৰু direct democracy কোনটো organizationত দেখা যায় Gram Sabha elections in India, है ना? And Gram Sabha election is the lowest tier of our 3-tier governance structure that was discussed in 73rd constitutional amendment, है ना? Fine. So the second point is equal representations ensure kore. Okay, fine. The Representation of People's Act 1950 provides for delimitation which brings equality in the process of election. है ना আমি এই কথাটো ডিসকাস কৰিছিলো কি এটা কনস্টিটুৱেন্সিত যেতিয়া আমি এই কনস্টিটুৱেন্সিটো সাপোজ 10 ভাগ কৰি দিও है না তো প্ৰত্যেকটো কনস্টিটুৱেন্সিত এটা ইকুৱেল নাম্বাৰ অফ পপুলেশন থাকিব লাগিব যাতে এই পপুলেশনটো এজন মানুহ ইলেক্ট কৰে ইহতিও এজন মানুহক ইলেক্ট কৰে and one person is responsible for the desires of a equal number of population pan India levelot মানে প্ৰত্যেকটো কনস্টিটুৱেন্সি the same population থাকিব আৰু এজন মানুহক ইলেক্ট কৰিব তেতিয়া হেতু proportional representation on the basis of population বুলি কম হয় নে brings equality in the process of election of course है ना ensuring roughly an equal number of electors in each constituency. Okay, we understood this है ना next thing is it ensures federalism. Federalism কেনেকে ensure কৰে যোনটো আমাৰ election commission of India article হয় है ना election commission of India article was 324 we discussed in our first part of the video है ना तो हेतुत की करे कि election commission of India is not only responsible for Lok Sabha elections it is also responsible for state legislative body elections है ना আমি এই ডায়াগ্রামটো পাইছিলো যে যত আমি chief electoral officer district election officer है ना रिटर्निंग ऑफिसर এইবিলাক এডমিনিস্ট্রেটিভ বডি ডিসকাস কৰিছিলো ন তো এইবিলাক তো স্টেটৰ কথাই ডিসকাস কৰিছিলো আমি তো ডেফিনেটলি দ্য ইলেকশন কমিশন অফ ইন্ডিয়া অলসো টেকস কেয়ার অফ দ্য স্টেট ইলেকশনস है ना তো ফেডারেলিজম এনশিওর কৰে ন দ্যাট মিন্স মানে স্টেটৰ কথাও হিয়তি এনশিওর কৰে আৰু সেন্ট্রাল লেভেল ইলেকশনসৰ কথাও এনশিওর কৰে তো ডেফিনেটলি দে আর লুকিং আফটার দ্য ফেডারেল স্ট্রাকচার है ना Fine. So, decriminalization of Indian politics. A term to my bare discuss kori asilu that 40% of people in Lok Sabha have heinous crimes recorded on their names. And our hetui moi ki kosilo criminalization of politics kosilo. Isn't it? So, hetui nohobar karane decriminalize koribo lagibo. Hoy na? So, decriminalize keneke korisile. We talked about the section 8 subsection 3 है ना of representation of peoples act 1950 junto ami bail to null and void kori disilo first part of the video we discussed this and second asle 8 subsection 4 in which we talked about ki appeal kora to nosolibo है ना supreme court 2003 appeal kora to null and void kori disile to decriminalize korise na bostu to in that part also we discussed this है ना so let's quickly look the representation of people act 1951 plays the significant role in breaking the politicians, police and criminal nexus. Fine. Politician, police and criminal nexus. Fine. Which is one of the greatest threats to the rule of law in India by prohibiting the entry of persons with a criminal background. এই বস্তুটো আমি ডিসকাস কৰিলো ইয়াত হয় না 8 subsection 3 8 subsection 4 আমি part 1 ত ডিসকাস কৰিছিলো কি আমি prohibit কৰো যদি বেল টু null and void কৰি দিছে তেতিয়া আমি prohibit কৰি আছো না এনেকৈ যি কোনো মানুহক ইলেকশন খেলিবৰ কাৰণে জুনে বেলত খেলিব চেষ্টা কৰে হয় না but has been convicted for more than 2 years or minimum 2 years है ना আৰু আমি appealৰ কেছ তো null and void কৰি দিছিলে 2013 ত সুপ্ৰিম কোৰ্টে তো that is how decriminalization process to ami ensure koro aru criminal background thaka manhok ami prohibit koro hoy na aru ei je iron triangle buli ko police bureaucracy aru criminal aru politician jonto nexus hoy hetu ami jate bhangibo paro thik ase hetur karaneo বহুত চেষ্টা চলোৱা হৈছে 1951 এক্টত ওকে যোনটা আমি মেজৰলি decriminalization of Indian politics বুলি এটা টাৰ্মিনোলজি ইউজ কৰো when you are writing in a mains answer no please use these terms exactly how it is okay criminalization of politics but decriminalization of Indian politics it is exactly if you write within 2 quotes it gives a good impression to the person who's checking the copy fine okay So the next point is it ensures accountability and transparency. Okay, the Representation of Peoples Act 1951 provides for the expenditure monitoring mechanism. Fine. Okay, which ensures that the accountability and the transparency of the candidate in the use of public funds or misuse of power for personal benefits. Fine. Etu jodi ami olo bhangi lebla bujabo lage etui bujaise ki ejon manhue jete election khele to তেওক এটা সাম অফ মানি ডেজিগনেট কৰা হয় ঠিক আছে তো এই যে সাম অফ মানি টু ডেজিগনেট কৰা হৈছে এই পইচাটোনো কৰ পৰা আহিছে এটো আমাৰ এই পাবলিক আৱার্ড আমি যে ট্যাক্স পে কৰো ঠিক আছে তো আমাৰ পাবলিক এক্সচেকাৰত যিমানখিনি জমা আছে হেতুৰ প্ৰাইটো ইহতক সাম অফ মানিটো দিয়া হৈছে হয়নে নহয় তো এই সাম অফ মানিটো তো কিবা এটা এনেকুৱা থাকিব লাগিব না প্ৰসিজাৰ এটা থাকিব লাগিব কি এটো ৰাইট ইউজ হৈছে নে নাই তো হেইটো ৰাইট ইউজটো এনশিওর কৰিবৰ কাৰণে একাউন্টেবিলিটি এন্ড ট্ৰান্সপাৰেন্সি এটা মডিউল থাকিব লাগিব only then we will come to know that our representatives have used our money wisely and have done justice to it है ना নহলে যদি আমাৰ পইচাটো মিসইউজ হয় and we don't get a proper representative for our desires है ना तो how will we ensure democracy to ensure democracy so this accountability and transparency mechanism or the expenditure monitoring mechanism ঠিক আছে is mandatory fine okay and the last point is clean election okay clean election ensure this is almost synchronous with this point the clean election ensure koribor karone the Representation of Peoples Act 1951 prohibits corrupt practices fine corrupt practices we talked about in section 8(3) and 8(4) and we have also talked about criminalization of politics like booth capturing we took the example of Vellore constituency है ना bribery or promotion or promoting enmity etc ensure the conduct of free and fair elections we had talked about initially है ना in our first part of our discussion, which in turn encourage political liberalization and democratization. Fine. So dite amar election procedure to clean hoy. Okay, clean hoy mane enko eta methodology ami use koru jontur pra ami free and fair elections ensure koribo paro. Free and fair ki mean kore ki ami kono bhoy bhab nohoake amar nijor junjon mon posondo junjon aspiring legislator hobo bisarise teok ami elect kori lepla amar vote to di lepla teok jikabo paro kono bhoy bhab nohoake titiai to ami free and fair election ensure korim hana aru titiai ki hobo ki hey process to ke je ami kono bhoy bhab nohoake nijor political opinion to eta pedestal hobo pariso thik ase ami express koribo pariso hetuei to bujai no ki we have a liberal democratic structure mane we can do what is our right to do है ना और ये तो political liberalization बोले क्यों कोई because it is a political assurance that we give to our representatives है ना तो एक गुटे वस्तु तो गुटे scenario तो ठीक है से এটা political liberalization और under it आमी consider करिबा पारो और हेतुए की ensure करे democratization of course democracy is of the people by the people and for the people है ना तो ये बस्तु तो ensure होबो है because हमें political liberalization और through the goye so there is no autocracy in this है ना there is no dictatorial procedure that was used in it we all expressed the ideas which we wanted to express and we elected a person whom we wanted to elect है ना fair and square okay and this point includes what the legible political funding fine we talked about the exchequer public exchequer concept na ki public exchequer juntu paisa ase this aspiring elector legislators will get this money to run for elections है ना तो हे जे election funding to legible hobo he bostu to ami ensure koribo lage hoy ne provides that only those political parties which are registered under section 29A of representation of people's act are eligible to receive electoral bonds and political funding fine এই যে মই কথাটো কলো কি পাবলিক এক্সচেকাৰত যিখিনি পইচা আছে সেইখিনি পইচা ইউজ কৰি এজন এসপাইরিং লেজিসলেটৰে নিজৰ ইলেকশনৰ কাৰণে ৰান কৰিব পাৰে হয় না কি ইলেকশন টু যিখিনি বস্তু পইচা লাগা হয় ক্যাম্পেইনিং কৰিবৰ কাৰণে বা প্যাম্পলেটস বা পোস্টাৰ্স বনাবৰ কাৰণে তো সেইখিনি পাবলিক এক্সচেকাৰৰ পৰা দিয়া হয় ন তো সেইখিনি বস্তু এই পাবৰ কাৰণে তেও সেকশন 29A Representation of People's Act 1951 or under or eta registered political party hobo lagibo thik ase this registration is mandatory thik ase aru ei je public exchequer pra paisa to ulai paise thik ase and the amount of money they are getting to run for the election there were multiple more ways juntu teu loke nijor funding to aru cover koriba pare one such procedure is the electoral bond okay কিছুমান bonds release কৰা হয় ঠিক আছে এই political party তোৰ নামত ঠিক আছে bonds in the multiples of suppose 10,000 okay and any it can go to any number ঠিক আছে fine so a is a electoral bond is about bond format bond is basically a paper type है ना this paper is given to the person who has deposited the money the x person है ना and the money is deposited on the name of the political party by this person x है ना तो এই ইলেক্টৰাল বন্ড বিলাক এই পলিটিক্যাল পাৰ্টি বিলাকৰ নামত দিয়া হয় যাতে কোনবা যদি philanthropic person suppose I am aligned to the aspirations of a particular political party and I want that political party to win তো মই কি কৰিম I have some money and I want to help that political party so I will do is I can buy a electoral bond in the political party's name and I can fund this political party যাতে এই পার্টি যদি জিকে then I will feel like no কি মুৰু expression of opinion to reflect কৰিছে এই পলিটিক্যাল পার্টি টু জিকিলে है ना तो फाइन दिस इज व्हाट इज मेंट बाय लेजिबल पॉलिटिकल फंडिंग हियर फाइन ओके फाइन तो आमी डेमोक्रेटिक पॉलिटी इन कंटेम्परेरी इंडिया आमी जोन दुटा लेजिस्लेशনৰ কথা পঢ়িলো 1950 আৰু 1951 এই দুটাৰ কি আমি এডভান্টেজেস হল হেকেটা আমি 5-6টা পয়েন্টত আমি সামারাইজ কৰিলো है ना we can call them as the significance of the legislation 1950 and 1951 all these points fine now we will discuss in crisp way ki democratic polity in contemporary India challenges ki hoy what are the challenges that we need to go through hai na ami significance to salo now we need to quickly go through the challenges fine to frequent elections and incongruent political ideologies led to unstable and weak governance. Okay, 1960s or probably soli ase eto coalition politics in India led to short term governments. Okay, ei bostu to easy ke jodi bujabo jao, this means that since the time 1990s ki hoisile ki bahut kita political party national level ahi goisile, ঠিক আছে, state level to ahi goisile bahut state on, hai na, to ki hoisile ki kunu eta particular party e majority vote nupua hoi goisile because there was tussle and there was no congruence in the ideologies of the political parties. Okay, to ki hoisile ki protect political party nijor majot fight korisile and not a particular political party could come up with majority of the votes. So when not a particular political party could not come up with the majority of the votes, what happened? Coalition government was formed, hai na. Coalition government is jitia bahut kira political party e nijor allegiance to die aru they form the government. Kintu ei bostu to hole ki disadvantage hoy ki all the political parties will try to express their own political ideologies, hai na, and if suppose the political parties don't have the same ideologies, there will be a tussle which we saw, hai na, during this period 1990s. Mane initially it started with Jan Sangh government, no, around in 1966, hai na, when the first non-Congress government came up, isn't it? So the first non-Congress government came up around in 1966. So TTI to ami dekhisilu ki hetu besi din no solile, less than almost a year, hai na, it did not even survive almost a year, almost like approximately. So iman hunkale nu kyo fall hoy gol, because they had different ideologies. So coalition government or etway disadvantage hoy, they sometimes they cannot come up together to one opinion and they rise and fall very quickly. So TTI ki hoy, there comes a situation jitia ami frequent elections koribo laga hoy, mane to select a powerful party to the power pedestal, hai na. To heitway ki hoy jodi ami frequent elections conduct koribo laga hoy, mane 5 bochoro jodi eta government nosole, to it becomes unfeasible na ki eta government e 5 bochoro jodi solibo para nai, it sacrifices our good governance, hai na, or sushashan, which we talked in our second ARC. We have talked about good governance and sushashan. এইবিলাক বস্তু স্যাক্রিফাইস হৈ যায়, है ना। তো এখিনি স্যাক্রিফাইস হোৱাটোৱে ডিসকাস কৰিছে কি আজিকালি ডেমোক্ৰেসিৰ এটোই চ্যালেঞ্জ হয় কি আইডিওলজিজ বিলাক যেটা সিমিলার নহয়, কোয়ালিশন গভর্নমেন্টৰ ফল এন্ড রাইজ অফ পলিটিক্যাল পার্টিজ ইজ ভেরি কমন and it is not good for the good governance of the country. Fine. The second point is competitive politics and power play leads to moral values, leads to lowering of moral values. Okay, so yata eta term use korise crony capitalism, the case of 2G spectrum scandal, bureaucracy, politics, crime. Fine. So yate ki koise competitive politics amar democracy formation or karne what do we need? A political scenario, hai na, যত মানুহে জানে কি ভোট কেনেকে কৰে, নিজৰ অপিনিয়নটো কেনেকে এক্সপ্ৰেছ কৰে, হেতুৱে যদি গৈ এনেকুৱা এটা সিচুৱেশন হৈ যায় যেতিয়া আমি আমাৰ ভোট কৰা অপিনিয়নটো এনেকুৱা এটা মানে সিচুৱেশনলৈকে লৈ যাম কি we will be swayed away by the majority opinion, ঠিক আছে। so there will come a time যেতিয়া আমি ফ্ৰী and fair election abide কৰিব নোৱাৰিম because we will be manipulated, है ना। We will be manipulated by giving freebies, or we will be manipulated by giving assurance ki apnaloke jodi amar karone vote kore we will give some tender to you or something like that. Jitia ei bostu to hoy to titia we call it a rich election procedure, hai na। titia amar procedure to aru democratic na thake, we will be following a rich election procedure aru heture sub part ki hoy competitive politics among political parties. A political party to aru B political party to, ঠিক আছে, they give assurance to X person and Y person, this is giving assurance to W and Z person. Fine. So A political party to X ok koise ki if you support me, if I win I will give you tender, and this person, this political party A is also saying Y, if you support us we will give you tender. Fine. And B is also doing the same thing. So is in the scenario ki ihoti nijor juntu political acumen hoy hetu use korise to come to power and then manipulate, hai na, the public exchequer which is criminalization. To competitive politics is only just for the sake of winning. A is competing against B, है ना? Just for the sake of winning, they are diluting the good governance structure. They are diluting the aspirations of the people, है ना? So this is called competitive politics. Jot ami political aggrandize koru nijor power junto ase amar hatat possible junto power ahe hetu aggrandize koru for future opportunities. হয় না নহয় আমি ফিউচার অপরচুনিটিজ দেখাই লৈ প্লা আমাৰ পাওয়াৰটো এগ্ৰেন্ডাইজ কৰিব চেষ্টা কৰিছো এই এক্স জনক আমি বুজাইছো কি চাওক আপুনি যদি আমাক সাপোর্ট কৰে উই উইল গিভ ইউ দিস থিং है ना সো এইটোৱে ক্রনি ক্যাপিটালিজম বুলি কয় দিস পারসন ইজ এ ক্যাপিটালিস্ট এন্ড হি ইজ এক্সপেক্টিং a favor in return of the assurance X can give to the political party A to win. Fine. Okay. The next thing is in challenges of a democratic polity is the democratic processes lead to delay in decision making. Fine. Eto bujai ki suppose in a household, suppose in my household loli A, B, C, D, we have 4 members in our family, okay? And we want to buy a car. Fine. So if my father by himself goes and buys this car, ঠিক আছে, there is no discussion. মানে 2 minute decide hoy gol ki we are going to buy a specific car. But if suppose my father thinks that he wants to buy a car, then he comes back home, discusses it with my mother, discusses with my brother or me, ঠিক আছে, so we 4 of us sat on a table and discussed which car to buy, है ना? So isn't this discussion going to take time? And isn't this the scenario also with democracy? In democracy we discuss and select our representatives, na? So it takes time. That is a factor in democracy. This is also a positive thing and this can also be a negative thing. In this, when we are discussing about the challenges, we have considered it little bit aligned to the negative scenario and we have said the democratic policies lead to delay, है ना? Lead to delay in decision making. Fine. Aru stagnation one hai. কারণ কি কোয়ালিশন পলিটিক্স তো স্ট্যাগনেশন আহি যাব বিকজ নান পার্টি ইজ গোইং টু এগ্রি উইথ দ্য আদার ওয়ান है ना যদিও আমি ডিসকাস করব চেষ্টা কৰিম দেয়ার উইল বি ডিলে অফ কোর্স দেয়ার উইল বি স্ট্যাগনেশন অলসো ফাইন সো দিস ইজ হোয়াট উই হ্যাভ এক্সপ্লেইনড হিয়ার fine the next point is elected rulers may not take decision in the best interest of the people fine আমি যে এই পলিটিক্যাল একিউমেন্ট টু এগ্রেন্ডাইজ করিও বুলি আমি যে A আৰু B দুটা পলিটিক্যাল পার্টিজৰ যে एग्जांपल দিছিলো কি X আৰু Y আৰু W আৰু Z হয় না ক্রনি ক্যাপিটালিজম করে বলি কইছিল কি টেন্ডার ডিম বলি কইছিল কারণে ভোট ডিম বলি কইছিল है ना তো ইলেক্টেড রুলার্স বিলাকে কি কৰিব পাৰে কি এই যে অপরচুনিটি টু লইছিল কি রেজ আস টু পাওয়ার উই উইল গিভ ইউ অপরচুনিটি है ना তো ইলেক্টেড রুলার্স মে নট টেক ডিসিশন ইন দ্য বেস্ট ইন্টারেস্ট অফ দ্য পিপল ডেফিনেটলি যদি ইহতি পাওয়ার হাংরি হৈ যায় পলিটিক্যাল পার্টিটো তো ইহতি নিজৰ পলিটিক্যাল পার্টিটো কেনেকে আগবঢ়াব পাৰে হেতুৰ ওপৰত বেছি কনসেন্ট্ৰেট কৰিব ন rather than the aspirations of the people who have voted them in general aspirations of the people will be diluted. So this is what we are talking here ki they may not take decision in the best interest because they will take decisions on their best interest not on the best interest of the people, है ना? And this happens because of crony capitalism. This is the scenario of crony capitalism. Fine. Okay. So now we have wholesome covered all the main topics of our day of the 1950s Act and 1951 Act. Fine. And we have also discussed ki democratic polity positive ki hoy ase negative ki hoy ase contemporary times hai na. Now we will very quickly discuss a mains answer so that if this question comes exactly in your answer ki jodi ei duta legislation or bikhoye dominantly hudhe aru heta positive negative ba significance hode so we can write 4 points in every part. Okay. So here our question is the entire electoral exercise in India rests on 3 pillars. 3 pillars bili koise dei. We are talking about 3 pillars. Now let's see what is the question of the 3 pillars. Article 326 we have talked about and the Representation of Peoples Act 1950 and 1951. Fine. And we have said here explain. So we need to write 326, explain 1950, explain 1951, explain, write some significance, है ना? Also try to write some negatives and way forward. So this will be our whole system of writing this answer for 250 words, है ना? 250 words means 3 pages in UPSC and 4 pages in APSC, है ना? So yeah, let's see what we can write in our introduction. Okay. Election Commission of India is a watchdog of free and fair elections in the country, and Article 324 of the country provides for its establishment. Fine. I said at the beginning of the first lecture that we did that this is a very apt introduction that we can use because we are including an article also in it, है ना? And it is a very crisp beginning to your answer, gives the idea कि you know about this question that is being asked, है ना? This is one option you can use, or you can also write this as your introduction, which I have given. Then either you can choose this part or this part to be written in the introduction. Okay, so here holding of free and fair elections is the sine qua non of democracy. To ensure conduct of elections in free, fair and in an impartial manner, the constitution makers incorporated part 15, article 324 or 329 in the constitution and empowered parliament to make laws to regulate the electoral process. Fine. Yes. So this also we had discussed in the first part of the video, है ना? We discussed about free and fair elections. तो हे बस्तुटुवे याते summary কৰি লিখি দিয়া আছে कि part 15 है ना, part 15 और article 324 ৰ পৰা 326 লৈকে আমি যে ডিসকাস কৰিছিলো कि free and fair elections ৰ কথা আমি এইকেইটা আৰ্টিকেলত মেনশন কৰো, হয় নে নহয়? And it is sine qua non for democracy. সেই কথাটোৱে এইখিনিৰ পৰা এইখিনিলৈকে মেনশন কৰা হৈছে. So you can very crisply write this part also or this also as your introduction. Fine. So we are sorted with our introduction now. Now let us see what we have to write in the body, है ना? तो body I had discussed कि we will have to as a तीनटा part আছে, article 326, 1950 और 1951 तीनटा আপোনালোকে বেলেগ কৈ লিখিব লাগিব. Okay, and possibly if you can write, try to write 3-4 points under each of them. Fine. Okay, so let us quickly try to revise. আমি already যেহেতু পঢ়িয়ে গৈছো একিটাৰ বিষয়, we will quickly revise about it. Okay, giving in reference যোনটো মই আগতে পঢ়াইছিলো সেইখিনি বস্তুৱে ইউজ কৰি মই আনসাৰটো লিখিছো. Fine. That means ki whatever the I have written in the used on the slides or in the previous video, no, to সেইখিনিৰ পৰাই মই আনসাৰটো বনাইছো. So you will be able to write if you go through this video only. Fine. So it provides that the election to the House of the People and Legislative Assembly of State should be conducted on the basis of adult suffrage. Fine. Adult suffrage or আমি এটা আর্টিকেল পাইছিলো হয় না নহয় adult suffrage এর বিষয়ে. So we have said about this only. The article of the Constitution ensures equality among voters without any discrimination on the basis of religion, race, caste or sex. We talked about this, है ना? It also reminds of the faith reposed by the constitutional makers in the capacity of the masses. Fine. So article 326 or বিষয়ে যেটা কইছে ঠিক আছে হেইটোৰ বিষয়ে আমি সমু কয় অলপমান আইডিয়া দিলো কি কিনো হয় 326, what are we even talking about, है ना? So we explained that it talks about adult suffrage and it ensures equality among voters, है ना? And discrimination on the basis of religion, race, caste and sex নহয়. So this point 1, 2 and 3. Fine. Aru yare provision ki aru fine. So ami eto 326 to we have written. I told you no that we have to write 3 points or 3 or 4 points under each of them. So we have completed 326. Okay, now we'll go through 1950s representation of act. We had discussed this act in lucid way in a very long method, hai na? So very quickly we'll write 2-3 points from there only. It provides for the allocation of seats. Yes, we have discussed it in the House of People and the legislative assemblies and legislative council, isn't it? We have discussed it, of course, hai na? It lays down procedure for delimitation of constituency. I gave you the India map where we had discussed ki constituency bila keneke distribute hoisile, है ना? कि লাদাখৰ এৰিয়াটো যে ডাঙৰ আছিল এখিনি এৰিয়াও বহুত ডাঙৰ আছিল. So I said कि यातो n voters asile, yato n voters asile. So that picture I am referring to in the first part of the video. There we talked about delimitation of constituency. Fair. So it lays down the qualification of voters. We talked about this also, है ना? It lays for the preparation of electoral rolls. We talked about the chief electoral officer, है ना? We talked about district election officer. We talked about the returning officer and the polling officer, है ना, of the local government. Fine. So this 4-5 points if you write, it will suffice for what you know about the Representation of People's Act 1950. Fine. Now, I have added a part significance under this Representation of People's Act 1950. If you want, you can write this significance as a whole for 326 1950 representation of people's act and 1951 representation of people's act এই তিনিটাৰে significance তো আপুনি last তল একেলগেও লিখিব পাৰে ঠিক আছে or if you have the knowledge suffice knowledge to write them particularly then also you can do মানে আপুনি 326 to লিখিলে তাৰে দুই চাৰি লাইন significance লিখিলে 1950s representation of people's act লিখিলে তাৰে দুই চাৰি লাইন significance লিখিলে then you write about 1951 and write 2-3 lines of significance about it fine so we'll quickly write the significance about it we will go through it that the act provides for direct election ঠিক আছে for every parliamentary constituency fine মানে direct election ensure করে fine okay it provides for delimitation of constituencies which ensures the incorporation of changing dynamics of the increasing population fine delimitation করে বলি তো আমি পাইছিলই কিন্তু delimitation টো কি ensure করে আমাৰ যে population standard to বছৰে বছৰে যে পপুলেশন বাঢ়ি গৈ আছে হেতুৰ বেসিছত যে আমি ডিলিমিটেশন হেৰি বিলাক এটা কনস্টিটুৱেন্সি কিমান ডাঙৰ হ'ব বা কেইটা কনস্টিটুৱেন্সি থাকিব হেইটো যে আমি চেঞ্জ কৰি আছো ঠিক আছে হেইটো একমোডেট কৰে 1950s এক্টৱে হয়নে definitely okay the next point is the act strengthened the federal polity of the country fine ami hikisilu ki federal form of government eta ensure kore ei representation of people's act 1950 ba 1951 eo hoyne no hoy because these two legislations have taken power from the constitutional articles 324 325 and 326 we had talked hoyne no aru ei geta kune banaisile parliament e banaisile hai na so it has power of the parliament and this parliament has ensured the federal polity to ensure hoy hone no hoy to representation of people's act 1950 or 1951 federal polity to ensure kore because ei duta legislation e central level elections or state level elections duitar kothai bornon kore hoy na okay so the next act that we need to talk about is 1951 act to ami 326 or 1950 representation of people's act we learned about to representation of people's act 1951 we will talk about hai na okay fine the provisions are it regulates the conduct of elections fine it regulates the conduct of elections mane elections no keneke conduct hoy heto representation of people's act 1951 e ensure kore I already said ki 1950 ke 1951 to all of basic specific hoy hoy ne no hoy so this is what is written here that it mane ground level of conduct of elections to actually keneke hoy heto 1951 e ensure kore fine okay it specifies the qualification and disqualification of members of the houses fine this is also we have learned it provides provisions to corrupt practices hai na didn't we learn about 8 subsection 3 we learned about 8 subsection 4 hai na we learned about criminalization of politics hoy na a bail dile je ami election khelibo nwaro hoy na ba ami appeal korar pisoto je election khelibo nwaro 2013 of supreme court e 8 subsection 4 to je null and void kori disile to ami ebla kohisu hoy na hoy hetu bostu etu likhisu a sentence to logot if you can give example of this to subsection 8 subsection 4 or 8 subsection 3 you will get very good marks hai na fine okay to 1951 or significance ki ase hetu ami potokke sai lo the act is significant for smooth functioning hai na of the Indian democracy and it bars the entry of person with criminal background representative bodies in representative bodies thus decriminalizing Indian politics we had learned in detail ki decriminalization of politics to keneke hoisile because amar kisuman provision ase 8 subsection 3 8 subsection 4 hai na constitutional articles of 8 324 325 hai na ebilak sobe ekelage ensure kore decriminalization of Indian politics hai na fine okay next point is the act requires every candidate to declare his assets and liabilities okay and maintain an account of election expenses we had talked about the public exchequer thing hai na ki accountability or transparency mandate kore this provision ensures the accountability and transparency of the candidate in the use of public funds fine we had discussed this okay it prohibits corrupt practices fine like booth capturing bribery promoting ensures the legitimacy and free and fair election fine I gave the example of Vellore constituency case hai na juntu amar free and fair elections are against asile है ना. If you remember this example of Vellore constituency, you will remember कि legitimacy और free and fair election A2 example असले, and if you remember it, you should please write it, okay, on your paper, so that your answer will be a little bit more different from your fellow competitors. Fine. So here we have come to the last slide of our discussion today, that this is type of a conclusion, okay. The ami prothomate 326 to discuss korilu. We then talked about 1950 act, hai na. Then we talked about 1951. We talked about the respective significance. Now we need to talk a little bit about the conclusion part also. Ki now when we have discussed, let's now conclude it, hai na. So here I have it that the act provides that only those political parties which are registered under section 29A of the Representation of Peoples Act 1951 are eligible to receive electoral bonds, and thus provides a mechanism to track the source of political funding, hai na. So this is about the 1951 Act. Fine. So here I have, you can add one more part in this whole answer, is that when you have discussed 326, 1950 and 1951, so initially I said that as you have written the significance of all three of this, you can increase, write about the negatives also of this, okay. So negative was what? That we got that in 126 section, when we discussed about the section 126 of Representation of Peoples Act 1951, we saw ki যোনবিলাক social media sites হয় হেবিলাকত কিন্তু 48 hours যোনটো banned আছিলে হয়নে নহয় হেতু কিন্তু হোল্ড হোৱা নাছিলে তো এটুটো এটা নেগেটিভ হয় হয়নে নহয় and second negative is irrespective of the fact that iman effort kora hoise transparency decriminalization or kotha discuss korlo tar pisotu 40% of the legislatures in our lok sabha is having heinous crimes convicted for heinous crimes hai na so how are we ensuring it that he bostu tu aru nohoy present to hetu eta lacuna hoy ase no to duta negative to ami dekhiye golu hoy ne aru third negative to whole you can write ki the scams that happen hai na the Chidambaram case files or the 2G spectral 2G scam hai na these scams are being conducted irrespective of all the efforts that has been made by Election Commission of India hai na so these three negatives we have seen so what is the way forward very crisply we can write that there was a person named T.N. Seshan hai na T.N. Seshan who was the Chief Election Commissioner of India around 1992 hai na so we can write that for the sustenance of corrective democracy or the good governance in our country we need the renewal of vows for democratic sustenance in our country and bring back people like T.N. Seshan or we should bring back Susashan thik ase as obligated by the second ARC so that we can fulfill the desires of our constitutional fathers, the mandate that our constitutional fathers had during the time of independence. So you should always end, the conclusion that you put up should always be a futuristic and forward looking. If in the conclusion you talk about the aspirations of our constitutional fathers, that is a very good way to end your answer because that also completes that you know about the aspirations, about a constitutional father that what aspirations they begin with ki amar election procedure to kenekwa hobo lagibo hai na so if you finish your answer with this then it is a very good way to finish your answer and that will make your answer a little bit better than your competitors. Okay, fine. So here we have completed the topic Representation of Peoples Act 1950, 1951 and we have talked in detail about the democratic polity in contemporary India. Also we have discussed the mains answer in a lucid way ki keneke 250 words ar karne eta 15 mark or answer likhibo lagibo. I hope I could able to help you with this topic. Thank you.